Pro Wrestling, you knew I was going to talk about this. We got to talk about the Forbidden Door pay-per-view, man. This is going to be a little quick audio blip. I'm going to be doing much more in-depth talk about this, obviously, over the next couple of months leading into the event. But tonight on AEW Dynamite on April the 20th, 4/20, it was announced that New Japan Pro Wrestling and All Elite Wrestling will be doing a joint show on June the 26th in Chicago at the United Center. I've already looked into it. The tickets go on sale Thursday morning, March the 5th, I believe, at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm already planning on using, if you guys, any of you guys know my Wrestling with Finance channel, know I got a bunch of free travel, so I've been looking for something to use. So this is definitely what I'm going to be using. Some of my, I got like 10 days of free hotel and 6 free flights, but I would be using some of those free flight points and some of those free hotel points on going to this show. Now, let's look at this from all different perspectives really quickly. How does this benefit All Elite Wrestling? Well, AEW benefits definitely from this. I would say New Japan benefits way more than AEW does from this, but AEW benefits from this for the fact that, as we all know, they have a very bloated roster. So if you've got some people who you intend to keep around, but maybe you need to take them off TV for a little bit to let people miss them, this is very similar to what happened in WCW back in the height of the Monday Night War, the Monday Nitro. Luger and Sting and those guys would go over to Japan for a while and be off of Nitro to give some other slots to some other people. I think this will help with AEW and some of their bloated roster issues and getting some of the wrestlers to be able to do a 2 or 3 week tour of Japan, be on a show, draw some interest over to New Japan. I think it benefits AEW in that way. It also, again, for AEW, gets their foot in the door with having more international exposure and having and growing an audience over in Japan. In fact, the last New Japan show I watched, there was a guy sitting behind the commentary booth wearing a Double or Nothing shirt. So they're starting to gain some traction over there in the land of the rising sun. New Japan, like I said, they benefit way more from this. New Japan, for those of you who haven't watched for a while, or those of you who are AEW fans who are coming in from WWE land over to AEW and don't know much about New Japan, the last 2 years they've been hit hard by the pandemic. As a combination of the pandemic, a couple of bad booking decisions, some injuries, they've only been able to have 20% capacity up until very recently. The fans still can't vocalize. Over in Japan, they're way more strict with the COVID protocol, so they're still social distancing. They still now have 50% capacity that they're allowed to have at shows. People have to wear masks. They can't yell or cheer or scream or boo. They have to clap and use thundersticks. So it's been very, very tough for New Japan over the last year for a number of reasons. And I think New Japan as a whole, it's hard to tell if they were back to what their full capacity was, because they were cooking right up into the pandemic. I think there's a lot of misconception from some people that they've been down for a while just because they were cold. They were on fire right after that whole Wrestle Kingdom. It was like Wrestle Kingdom was like a year after AEW had started, and New Japan was still cooking. Naito had won the championship finally. He had this great title defense against Kenta and one of the better shows they had that year. And then a couple weeks right after that New Beginning show, the pandemic hit and everything kind of went south. So that's how New Japan benefits from it. I think they're also going to benefit heavily if there are people from AEW, and I expect that this is probably going to be the case, that are going to be announced on that same show that they're going to be in a G1 tournament, which happens a month after, or not even a month, a couple weeks after this pay-per-view. So there's a lot of benefit all around for New Japan, and maybe they can bring back some of those fans who were watching New Japan and now are spend more time watching AEW and don't watch as much New Japan. Which brings up something that I definitely wanted to point out, and I definitely want to get out there in the wrestling community, is that I've heard, and I saw one guy with a video that has no views talking about nobody cares about this. It's like, bro, where do you think All Elite Wrestling came from? If it was not for Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling did what they did not that long ago, it was like a couple of years ago. Remember, AEW's only been around for 3 years. If it wasn't for, in particular, New Japan, And the combination of the Elite and the Being the Elite crew when they were in New Japan, that combination gained so much popularity that we got an All Elite Wrestling. That's what started the whole thing. There is no AEW without New Japan. So that combination, I'm excited to see that combination again. And I think there's a lot of AEW fans, again, a lot of the ones who probably came over from WWE and didn't come over because they have been following these guys priorly in New Japan, which I'd say that the audience is probably 50-50 split on that. We'll be able to see much more in the next couple of months. But that whole combination is what drew all this attention. You know, who would have heard, what most wrestling fans in the United States and in the West and Europe would not have ever heard of Kenny Omega if it wasn't for that match with Okada. Remember, that's what started a lot of this stuff for a lot of people. So the combination again, the Western style mixed with the New Japan style, I think could be really, really awesome. I think if this partnership is involving some storylines weaving in and out of each other through both promotions, I think that's pretty awesome. Another thing I saw, I heard one YouTuber say that they were hoping that there's some stuff on Dynamite leading up to the show. I don't think it's gonna be a lot of that. I think this is gonna be a lot more like the old WCW New Japan shows back in the 90s when they had those big super cards at the Tokyo Dome, where, you know, Flair took on Fujinami and they would send the Steiners and Arn Anderson and Barry Windham and, you know, all Sting and all those guys. They went over to Japan once a year to do a big annual show with WCW versus New Japan. And this is nothing new. This is the 50th anniversary of New Japan. They did a New Japan versus Pro Wrestling Noah show earlier, which was a big deal in Japan. And AEW's been doing a lot. New Japan's been doing a lot of that this year. So New Japan doing a New Japan versus AEW show does not surprise me, given the fact that that's kind of in line with what they've been doing for their 50th anniversary year. But back to the whole thing about expecting people on the show. Keep in mind, New Japan Pro Wrestling is, again, one of the biggest wrestling companies in the world, not called WWE. They have their own shows that they're doing over the next 10 weeks, whatever it is, until this show happens. And in that time frame, they have 3 big major events. They have Wrestling in Dontaku, which is coming up pretty soon, which is a stadium event for them. They've got the Best of the Super Juniors tournament that's coming up. And then they have Dominion, which is, I would say, and I usually say for WWE fans, it's like New Japan SummerSlam. It's one of their biggest one-off events that's not a tournament during the year behind Wrestle Kingdom. So those are 3 major events. All 3 of those are really big events on the New Japan calendar. So they're going to be more focused on booking that and getting their rivalries and feuds and storylines going for that than they are going to be sending Okada and Naito and Tanahashi on a plane over here to be on Dynamite for 2 or 3 weeks in a row. It's not going to happen. What you're probably going to see more of, though, is a lot of the New Japan Strong people, in particular Jay White, who I was mentioning this a while ago. Like, I think this whole thing that's going on, for those of you, again, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on with Bullet Club over in Japan, and this kind of split that's gone on with the Guerrillas of Destiny and all of that stuff, and Jay White being kind of in the center of all of the stuff that's gone on in New Japan, on NJPW Strong, and over in Impact Wrestling. And Jay White as in the eye of the storm, and Adam Cole was associated with him, and they had that on the announcement tonight, where they're continuing that collaboration between Adam Cole and Jay White. I am suspecting, and I'm wondering now, I'm going to talk, I don't want to go there yet because I still don't know if this is going to happen, but if it looks like they're going to do what I think they might do from a narrative perspective, Jay White being the center of this storm, now mixing in with the Elite. Ooh, man, there's some really good stuff they could do with that if they're doing what I think they're going to do with it. But we'll see if they get there. So yeah, I think that's what you're going to see. Is it's going to be mostly focused on that. They're probably, because for this pay-per-view, they really only have to get across 2 rivalry matches, and I think given that the kind of obvious main event for this is CM Punk versus Kazuchika Okada, both of whom at the time could be the champions of the respective companies, that's going to be your champion versus champion match. Okada already said he wanted to wrestle Punk. Punk responded on Twitter by saying, "Hey, come to my town," and the address that Punk gave him was the United Center, which is where this event is happening. It is highly likely that CM Punk might be AEW champion by the time we get to this show. So Okada as IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, who most likely will be champion by that time. Again, big roads for him to travel. He's got 2 big title defenses before that. But I don't think they're taking the belt off Okada before then. And then CM Punk's the champion. Hey, that could be a really, really cool big time main event that I definitely would be looking forward to see. The rest of the card, and I think I'm going to save this for another, because there's so many dream matches on here. Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. Toru Yano, we're finally going to get the comedy matchup with Toru Yano and Orange Cassidy, hopefully. However, this Bullet Club Elite Guerrillas of Destiny conflict is going to work out with Undisputed Era. There's like 4 different sides to that whole thing that we're possibly going to see here. Jeff Cobb versus Keith Lee. Hiromu Takahashi versus Darby Allin. There's so many, and that's just scratching the surface. There's so many combinations that they can do on this show that would be very, very interesting. And again, for the people that are kind of crapping on this, I suspect there are a lot of new wrestling fans who are not very high resolution thinkers. They're pretty low resolution. Again, I already explained why it's a big deal. There'd be no AEW if it wasn't for this collaboration happening 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. This is why we have AEW, so this is really exciting. And I don't think a lot of people really get that, but hopefully that gets out there and people explain it to people like, this combination is the reason we have AEW. So it is a big deal, not just because you have 2 of the biggest wrestling companies in the world having a joint show, but it's also, this is the combination that's why we have AEW. I think I've stressed that enough in this audio clip. But I'm excited about it. I want to know what you guys think about this. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Again, I'll be talking a lot about this as one of the few YouTubers that actually covers New Japan on a regular basis and actually still watches them. For me, this tickles me pink because I love the New Japan guys. I love the AEW guys. There's going to be a lot of assholes talking. Ignore them. I'm already seeing that, but here's the thing about that too. The ratio of that is so small. Like even searching for this, there's like 9 videos that are praising it, and then there's the one person with 200 views who's shitting on it. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Don't let the negativity get to you guys too much. This is for us to celebrate. And again, if you're thinking, well, this is too niche, it's not going to draw a new audience. Wrestling fans are so concerned with business things that they don't understand, and which always makes me laugh because none of these motherfuckers run companies or put anything out there in public. By the way, yes, I do. I'm a best-selling author. But this kind of stuff is always funny to me because I always draw Marvel comparison. When Thanos showed up at the end of Avengers, nobody in the general public knew who the hell this big dude with a purple chin was. Why is he at the end of this movie? This is for hardcore comic book geeks. And guess what today? I don't think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't know who Thanos is or the Infinity War in popular culture. I think probably 1 out of every 5 people you talk to probably will know that. That's the and that's the thing that New Japan and AEW need to do with this. They should approach it from that kind of perspective. This is this thing that we've been hearing about and hearing about and hearing about. Here's this big mystery. Now we're going to show you little by little why this is a big thing and why the hardcore fans love this idea. People who know and have seen the stuff in the past are excited about it, and why now we're bringing it to this stage to you, and now you're going to get to see why those people are excited about it. And again, for the 15th time, it's the reason we have AEW to begin with. So again, I want to know what you guys think. Let your voices be heard in the comment box below. I will see you guys soon for a proper video on this later on this week here on the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. Have a good day.